To create an experientially rich life that you really enjoy and appreciate, you'll need to become skilled at dealing with fear and other forms of resistance that may come up along the way, like worry, dread, anxiety, nervousness, shyness. Let's just call all of that fear energy. These aren't the vibes you're looking for. Otherwise, you'll miss out on so much of life's richness. You'll be holding back way too much. And so I'll guide you through an effective method to bypass that fear energy. And the core method is really to engage with stronger and more compelling vibes than fear. It's not to face directly towards fear itself, but actually to simply do an end run around it so you're not actually feeling the fear. Your thoughts sprout from your vibes. So your vibes or your feelings shape your thoughts. And fear energy, when you're feeling that in your body, it gives rise to thoughts that we could call excuses, objections, problems, all of them framed as reasons to avoid new experiences. It's a recipe for stuckness. Fear energy actually lowers your intelligence. It causes you to put too much weight on problems and too little weight on the opportunities and the gains that are possible. It leads to irrational risk assessment because many risks are actually worth taking. So you don't want to assess risks by putting too much weight on the downside. You want to consider the potential upside as well. The key here is you don't want to make decisions from a place of fear, anxiety, worry, and so on. Those are likely to be dumb decisions. You can't trust fear-based decisions. They are suboptimal. It's extremely limiting to make decisions from a place of fear. It will limit your creativity as well. So what's the alternative? Well, you need to link with vibes that are stronger than fear, so you can access your best intelligence and make wiser choices. Now, how do you do that? I recommend starting with two pieces, courage and trust. Courage you can think of as the decision to move away from fear and to seek out a stronger vibrational core. Now, trust is this inner knowingness that you can find and embody stronger vibes than fear. It's not faith, it's not hope. Those are weaker fear-based versions of it. Trust is really something that arises from knowing how. Like you know you can do this, you know the process that I'll be sharing with you. As an example, say from public speaking, you can choose to focus on vibes of cooperation and co-creation with an audience. You can experience wonder and synergy and friendship, joy, fun, playfulness, feeling like we're all on the same side together. Fear vibes, on the other hand, give rise to needy thoughts and intentions, such as you may think about trying to earn the audience's approval or think you need to earn their approval. You may try to impress people, or you may seek their validation. You may become hypersensitive to making mistakes. You may, in turn, over-prepare to try to prevent all these imaginary issues you think might come up along the way. You might become extra self-conscious, and it makes you more constrained because you can't feel free to take more risks. Fear-based thoughts often frame other people as threats or competitors on some level. It gives rise to defensive behavior, and it encourages you to disconnect from people. Better vibes might see you focusing on totally different kinds of thoughts, like sharing the insights that you want to share, doing a reasonable amount of prep, but not over-preparing, speaking comfortably, and making it a smooth process creatively, making it something that you enjoy, not fighting yourself internally, feeling like you have this inner cooperation coming out of you. One phrase I learned many years ago, which I especially resonate with, is the audience is always on your side. You're not in competition with them. They're not a threat. You can have an aligned purpose where everyone's on the same page together. That's what I imagine us creating here. For instance, our combined purpose, I could state it as, we are co-exploring, creating lives of experiential richness together. And that's something we can all cooperate with. We don't have to compete. One person's gain is not another person's loss here. It's not a zero-sum game. We can all learn from each other. We can explore this together. There's plenty of experiential richness in life to go around that we can all share in. Vibes that align with harmony and cooperation, they lead to more harmonious behavior. And that encourages connection instead of competition. So it's a very nice alignment of our intentions to say, hey, let's all create rich and rewarding lives that we appreciate. We can all get on the same page there. We don't have to create the disconnection and the threatening type of posture that would be a natural extension of a fear-based vibe. So fear-based vibe gives rise to totally different kinds of thoughts, but harmonious vibes, or vibes that are stronger than fear, like some of the ones I mentioned, will give rise to more cooperative behaviors and more cooperative level thinking. And that's very powerful. These vibes can also give rise to different body level sensations. For instance, with stronger vibes, you can feel a sense of relaxation in your body. You won't be nervous or anxious. You can feel happy. You can feel joyful. You can feel connected with other people. There's a book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read it many years ago. Maybe you've heard of it. I disagree with the book. Well, its title at least. You don't actually need to feel the fear. You don't have to try to push past the fear. You can actually just work around the fear, bypass it entirely. Not only is fear not necessary, it's actually harmful because fear, feeling that vibe in your body, prevents access to your best intelligence. It degrades your intelligence instead. So yeah, fear is the mind killer.
Madib.
Don't try to face your fear then. Seek to replace that fear energy with stronger and more stable vibes, something that gives you access to your deeper intelligence and more expansive and cooperative and harmonious thinking. A strong sense of aligning with a purpose can help here, but it's not essential by any means. You just need stronger vibes. So even vibes like fun or playfulness can be stronger than fear. Fear energy makes objections seem like a bigger deal than they really are. It makes them seem more daunting. So if you have one objection and you're in a fear-based state, you may interpret that as a reason to avoid taking action, a reason to avoid having a certain kind of experience. For example, say you want to get into YouTubing like I've been doing lately. You may have an objection to, well, what happens if people criticize me? Or I'm not good at it, my skills aren't high enough. Or I get nervous on camera. You might have those kinds of objections arising. If you vibe with stronger feelings, stronger energy, stronger vibes, they will keep you aware of the potential benefits and gains more than the downsides. You'll be focused more on what you can accomplish, what you can experience, the ripples you can create, the connections you can create with people, having new friends that may come into your life because of it, business opportunities, the wonders of being creative and doing creative work, the path of building new skills. All of that will be more of your focus when your vibes are stronger. Now, stronger vibes also help you take a more rational and objective look and a creative look at objections. So you may have some of the same objections, but now you'll see them as problems to be solved rather than reasons to avoid taking action. So when you create this foreground feeling, this stronger vibe of, say, connection and cooperation, harmony, in the background, you may still have now and then an anxious feeling arise and surface. But it's no longer your default state of being, and so it doesn't knock you out of the connection to your goals and the experiential richness you want to create. What I suggest in that case is dialogue with those feelings. Invite them to participate, because now the fear energy that comes through is of a different nature. Now it's taking the form of a messenger. You're sensing it against the backdrop of what's already strong and harmonious as your baseline. And so when it comes through, then it has a real purpose. And so what I suggest is doing some journaling with it, talking aloud with it, handwriting out your answers. I especially like the technique of morning pages that I learned from Julia Cameron, who wrote the book, The Artist's Way. And what I do is when I get one of those feelings of, oh, there's some dread or there's some anxiety about something here, and I'm not really clear on what it is, if I know it's happening against the backdrop of an otherwise harmonious and very aligned and very strong vibrational experience, then I know it's got something to tell me that's useful. And so I will grab 3 blank pieces of paper and just write until I fill all 3 pages. Really just one side of each page is fine. It takes me about 45 minutes to do that. And all I do is just write whatever wants to come out, just handwriting. There's something very powerful about doing it in the tactile way of using your actual hand. I'm left-handed, so I do it left-handed. Writing it out rather than typing it, it really connects you to the feelings and the vibes and the ideas more. It lets the energy flow through your body. And what this does is it takes that emotional energy and it draws it into the rational brain, allows you to process it in the form of thoughts and ideas and possibilities and potential objections, problems to be solved, and you may feel some solutions arising too. It activates your creative thinking, and it pulls that stuck energy, otherwise stuck energy, out of the emotional space and it diffuses it. So then by the end, I pretty much always notice I'm no longer feeling that dread or that anxiety or that fear or whatever it was. Now that I've processed the message, that part of me feels heard and it can settle down and relax. So I often interpret those fear-based feelings as this is a knock. There's a message. It's like an email to be opened from my inner self. And by unpacking the message, then that knock no longer has to exist. And so it goes away. Now, if it's a stronger one and I feel it the next day still, or I do this technique and I still feel it afterwards, then I'll just set it aside and come back to it and do the same exercise the next day and process more of it. So sometimes there's, maybe like 20% of the time, there's more of the message to be unpacked. And usually by the second or third day in a row that I do it, it's really gone. Otherwise, it may still be waiting to see that I'm going to take some action. So when I do come up with solutions, I try to put them into implementation mode immediately if I can, to show that part of me that it doesn't have to keep knocking and keep reminding me. To say, yes, I not only heard your message, but here I'm actually applying it right now too. And that is just a super helpful way of cooperating with that part of your emotional nature. What kinds of messages get unpacked then? Well, generally they fall into three categories. One is that, okay, this is really a trivial objection, like it just wanted to be heard. There's some part of myself, I could call it my inner child, just wanted to be heard. It just wanted to say something. It just wanted to be listened to and voice this objection. And that's all I need to do is just listen to it. And it may even be an irrational objection. It just needed to bring that to the surface and get it out and know that I've heard it and I've acknowledged it. And all I have to do is go, okay. And then it's done and it won't come back. The second category is a minor risk. Like, okay, there's some kind of thing here that if you screw this up, it's not going to go so well for you. And I want you to pay some extra attention to that. And maybe you need to do things a little differently to address that risk. And so then I hear the risk and I'm going, okay, how about this solution? And I even dialogue with that part of me and get a sense of, by its feeling response that I feel in my body, how satisfied it is with my potential solutions. And then the third category is a major risk. Like, this could be a real reason for not going this direction at all. Like this is something I do perceive as a genuine type of threat. And in those cases, I generally have to do a bit more work. Like, okay, yeah, First, I want to acknowledge it. I want to see it. All right, there is a part of me that is concerned about this. Even if my rational mind thinks it's not really going to be that big a deal or it's a low probability of happening, some part of me doesn't necessarily agree with that. And so if I really want to feel that inner harmony, like all parts of me are working congruently and in alignment with my goals, with my desire for a certain kind of experience, I need to address those and solve problems as I go. And there are some times where I just realize, there is a part of me that just does not feel good about this. And I will restructure the goal. I will change it. I will decide to have a different kind of experience because it just doesn't feel safe. And I realize I can't really railroad it. I mean, I could, but it's not going to be a great experience to do that because some part of me will be feeling that fear and that anxiety. And I don't necessarily want to be having that while I'm going through the experience. I want to have joyful experiences and experiences that feel harmonious. So I might adjust the way I approach it and set a completely different kind of goal, or at least a slightly adjusted goal to address those major risks that are pointed out by my emotional self. So let's go through some specific examples of how we could use these stronger and more aligned vibes to address some specific risks. Take the risk of criticism. So is criticism a real risk? Yeah, in the sense that people probably will criticize you if you do anything interesting with your life. For example, many years ago, somebody actually registered the domain name stevepavlinaisthedevil.com, mainly just to put up some criticism against me and to rant about a bunch of other things. And I thought, okay, I'll just take that in stride. The site's offline now, but you can look it up at archive.org if you care to. So I've had a lot of experience with actual criticism. And the criticism itself is not such a big deal. When you're in alignment with really strong vibes, it's actually pretty easy to handle it. There are lots and lots of different solutions. When you're in fear-based vibes, then you worry about it, you fret over it, you stress about it. You may procrastinate on doing certain types of things and having certain experiences because you're worried about the criticism. If, however, you're more aligned with vibes of harmony and cooperation and co-creation, then you get some, criticism that comes through and you may classify it as like, okay, some of it's actually helpful and it's constructive. And yeah, I can take that as advice and use that and decide if I, want to work with it. my experience personally is that most of that kind of stuff is worthless. It's non-existent, because people really need to get deeply into your situation and really understand it. And the drive-by critics just are not going to give quality, constructive feedback. I can get that from, say, a coach or a good friend, somebody who knows me really well. They can give me that kind of constructive criticism. But coming from some random person over the internet, pretty much never. Virtually never. Does that ever actually have some use? The other kind is the much more common one, which is just like mean-spirited trolling. And in that case, I just see it as like, okay, it's just something that comes with the territory, but it's fairly easy to deal with. You just ban the people who do that kind of thing from your community. You ban the trolls. I'll block their emails or whatever coming through. And it's a reasonable solution. I'm also thinking if they get into the community, then, my role is I want to protect the integrity and the harmony of the community itself. So while those kinds of critics may assert that they have the right or the entitlement to do that kind of stuff, I call bullshit on that. I say, try again, because you're banned and you're out. And then they squawk and say, that's toxic. You can't do that. And I'm like, you're banned again if I have to. They might come back with a second account or something like that. And I have no qualms about doing that. I'm happy to flick the critics out, the trolls and the stuff, because I just see it as a waste of time. Because when you're in this place of, the purpose is to create a harmonious community where we can all support each other and grow together and get things done. And when other people come in and they assert other kinds of vibes and they try to push that into your community, like very critical things, extra sarcasm and stuff, and I just realized that all that kind of conflicts with the purpose and the vibrational space that we're creating together, and none of that's necessary. And so I just sweep it out. It doesn't bother me at all to do that. I've had many years of experience on this path dealing with different kinds of communities, and I just find that that's been the simplest approach. And in places where I haven't been able to create that kind of experience, where I can't maintain the integrity of the community, at least help it in that way, and where there's not mutual support to do that together, then I abandon those platforms. I abandon Instagram. I abandon Facebook. I abandon Twitter, or X. What a stupid name. 10 years ago, back in 2014. I don't understand how people even tolerate it. I know some people like the benefits, but just the vibrational space is a swamp. It's a mess to me. So I don't want to deal with that. I actually like the vibes of YouTube, and I like the vibes of the community in Conscious Growth Club that we created, because those are spaces where I feel like I have sufficient control to help maintain the vibrational space and to invite people into that. So the idea here is to pick vibes that are stronger than fear, and then look at your problems from within those stronger vibes. And you will see different solutions emerging. You will see different approaches. You will see a different prioritization. With fear, you might be thinking that your priority is to prevent criticism from happening or not do things that would incite your critics. And that's not very freeing. I actually do more of the opposite. I will poke my critics and prod them and tease them and and bait them very easily, dropping kinds of things that are very easy for them to go after, so that I can catch them early and sweep them out of the community. I see people as the carriers of those kinds of vibes. So if somebody's going to stoop to that level and become an ass, then I'm going to sweep them out really quickly. And I want to basically invite criticism and invite the negative kind quickly and early on. And you'll see me doing that in a bit in this very video, so that we can sweep out some of that critical energy and not have it disturb the real purpose of the community. One vibe in particular that's stronger than criticism, and this may sound a bit funny, but it's sexiness. So what happens when I get a critical email that's really, just trolly in nature, or a really nasty comment, I'll often invite my wife Rochelle to read it to me in a sexy voice.
Hi, Steve. After reading your latest article, I must tell you that, according to the Bible, you're going to burn in hell. You really won't like it when your flesh melts off your face and pools at your feet, especially since your feet will also be melting. I strongly suggest that you repent immediately and beg for God's forgiveness, even though He probably won't forgive such a total wretch like you. Oh, and please, stop leading everyone astray.
So you get the idea. Now, can you see how that might change your relationship with criticism, right? Criticism really has zero chance when it's pitted against sexiness or playfulness or fun. it's not a big deal at all, right? In fact, you even celebrate it when it arrives because it's something fun to play with. Now, what about the objection of having a lack of skill in some particular area and you don't feel you're good enough? Well, when you look at it from the lens of fear, then you're thinking, oh, this is imposter syndrome, right? Like, I'm not good enough at this. If you're thinking I have imposter syndrome, you're in a fear-based framing and a vibrational space to begin with, and you've already lost. So you're not going to win by trying to rationally solve your way through the imposter syndrome framing. You don't want to use that framing at all. Instead, if you start from a place of, okay, I'm in a place of strength or harmony or co-creating with people or creating fun experiences together, you have a stronger vibrational grounding than fear. You don't even think about imposter syndrome. You just think, okay, what skills do I have that I can leverage and what are my strengths and where would it be helpful to continue learning and growing? So I did that with my video editing skills. A year ago, that used to be my least favorite part of making videos, was doing the editing. And I realized the main reason was I wasn't that good at it. And I saw editing as like this, this last thing I had to do, part of the process that was annoying and sometimes time consuming. And if you'll note some of my earlier videos, I just recorded them all with no editing internally, like just one take, record the whole video, don't do any edits. Don't try to do any effects, no titles, nothing like that, no transitions. Just skip the editing process entirely. So, they had bad lighting and bad sound, and I just didn't put any effort into any of that, mainly because I didn't really know how or I didn't want to exert the effort into that. Well, I thought I can actually improve in this area about a year ago or so. So I started investing in it, and I began watching editing tutorials. What I moved towards were people that had vibes where they were excited about video editing. Like one YouTuber I learned a lot from was Dylan Bates. So I followed his channel and I joined his Patreon. And then Jen Jager was another one. I really liked her and I got to see her speak in person. And most of all, I picked up their enthusiasm because both of them are just like hyper enthusiastic about Final Cut Pro. And that's the main tool I use. And so they really transformed or helped me transform my relationship with Final Cut Pro and with video editing. And from there, I just sort of bounced in different directions, continuing to learn and to be curious and to build skill. And I focused on vibes like fun and creativity and playfulness and expansiveness. Before that time, I had never used a single Final Cut Pro plugin. And now I've got maybe a couple hundred of them. I acquired most of them during the 2023 Black Friday sales. And I thought this is a great time to get into it. So I'll acquire all these plugins and figure out what to do with them later. And I just sort of spent days going through them and figuring out, they must have had like 10,000 different effects among them all. Most of them I got in large bundles, like a bundle of 99 plugins together, things like that. And I didn't worry so much about it because they weren't that expensive with all the sales and the bundling and stuff. So I just took my time and went through them, one by one and played around with them and used them to open up my imagination and my creativity. And I learned to do more that I never done before, like rotoscoping. And I realized, oh, that's really easy, especially with some AI tools that can do it for you. It's fun. It's simple. There's a lot of effects in video that look like they're hard to do, and they're actually pretty easy, but they seem kind of cool. And so I just like playing around with the expressiveness of it. And that really changed my relationship with the lack of skill because I approached it more rationally. I just said, look, I can learn stuff, and it can be fun. It can be interesting. And I just follow what I like. So I like some, geeky, nerdy stuff. So I'll put that in my videos because I think it's interesting and it's part of my process of exploring it and playing with it. So I hope you'll humor me at least when I do that, and it won't be too annoying. But if it is, then I'll learn from it, and I will make mistakes along the way. But that's part of the learning experience. And so you don't have to create this tension in trying to fake things or doing imposter syndrome. I don't have anything to prove in this area because I'm just like maybe a dangerous amateur is how I think of myself. I'm not exactly a pro editor. I know enough to do some damage, so to speak, but it's fun to play with it. And so I play in that space. So I don't have to put myself out there as like some pro video editor and try to live up to an unreasonable standard. I can just be at the standard where I am and just express my skills as they are and keep evolving and growing with them. And if people are going to be mean-spirited about it, I'll just sweep them aside and say, okay, you're not really vibing with the purpose here, because part of my purpose is to explore and experience different things in life. You get the idea? What about getting nervous on camera? Well, where does that come from? That's the body's response to that fear-based vibing that we're doing, right? I found that a great antidote for getting nervous on camera or in front of an audience, because that used to be an issue for me too, is to focus on vibes of caring and connection. Just to realize like, hey, we're all connected. There's nothing really to be afraid of here. And especially with my intentionality, put it on caring. Because if I put it on caring, I'm thinking about the other person or the other people. In fact, another tip I learned is not to focus on a big audience. Even if you know there's going to be lots of people watching or recording that you're creating, or you're speaking to a large group, you want to focus as if you're communicating to just one person. So I will look at one individual in a crowd if I'm speaking and speak to them one at a time. And I might shift my gaze around, but I'm just talking to one person at a time. I actually do this on Zoom calls too. I do lots and lots of Zoom calls. I'll focus on just one person and I'll look at them and talk to them. They don't necessarily realize I'm doing that. They don't know, who I'm looking at on my screen, but I talk to one person at a time, then I shift my gaze and talk to another person and shift my gaze and talk to another person. And that is a way of focusing on the connection, because it's hard to connect with the whole group energy. But if I focus my energy on one person, I can create better, stronger vibes of connection. Since I've written millions of words of published content, including a book, and these are all the translations of my book, well, some of the translations of my book into different languages, I learned it's also really effective just to write for one person. So I will get in my mind a certain individual. Maybe it's somebody I know, or it's just an archetype of a person. And I think, okay, somebody in their 20s and they're struggling with money and they still live with their parents, and, pick the person's gender if I want to do that. And then I write an article just for that one person. And those, interestingly or oddly, tend to be the ones that are perceived as the most universally applicable to people. So many more people feel like I'm writing for them specifically if I do that and choose one specific person or type of person that I'm writing for. I try to do the same with creating videos. Like I think about the person it's for, and I just speak to that one person. So while I'm, recording and just looking at the camera lens, I'm also thinking, this is just for you. It's just for you watching. I created all this, the whole course is just for you. This is a whole experience we're creating just for you. And you're the one watching. You're the individual. Where's the rest of the audience? It's just you. So that's the framing you can use as a creator too. And it's really powerful, really effective. It gets you into that heart space more, gets you past the fear, the nervousness, the anxiety, the sense of disconnection from people, and it helps you focus more on the connection, the conversation, the sharing, the insights, and the creative flow. Another thing that can be helpful is just creating a relaxing environment. So I redid my video studio recently. You might note in previous videos, I just had this plain blue backdrop, and I found that a bit boring after a number of years of using it. So I got more furniture, and I kind of created a space partly to feel good for me sitting in it. So the space feels less cold and techy in nature. It feels like a warmer environment to sit in. And I like that because it's better for my vibes for doing the recording. And even though you might think, okay, well, that seems selfish doing stuff that's good for my own vibes, isn't that good for other people too? Like, do you want me to be nervous? Do you want me to be anxious? Is that going to help you in any way? So that's where you go back to looping back to the audience is always on your side. You don't really have to take sides. You don't have to create that disconnection with people. You can have the experience of communicating with a large audience as if you're just doing a coffee shop conversation with one person. That's the kind of framing that arises when you focus on more powerful vibes, when you just decide, I don't want to focus on fear energy. I don't want to use that. I don't want to make decisions based from fear energy. What are the vibes that really attract you? What are the vibes that are stronger than fear energy? I've mentioned some of mine, like caring, cooperation, harmony. For you, they may be different. Your stronger vibes may not be the same as mine, and that's totally okay. But here's the invitation, which is to go and seek them out. Find out what are those vibes where you feel them and you realize they can take you past the fear. You don't have to be nervous and shaky, when you're doing things that are experientially new. You can feel centered, you can feel comfortable if you can connect yourself with vibes that are stronger than fear. And when you get the vibes right, you generate totally different kinds of solutions instead of dwelling on the problems. And that, I think, is really the proper functioning of the human brain to be able to do that. What else can we say about how to identify these stronger vibes, though? Well, one tip is to learn from others who are already doing something in the direction where you might want to explore. When I wanted to get into public speaking, for instance, I joined Toastmasters. And because I joined Toastmasters here where I live in Las Vegas, there are some pro speakers and comedians, professional comedians like stand-up comics in the group. And I learned a lot from them. Their joy in how they framed it, seeing it as an opportunity for transformation, to create laughter, to have that sense of privilege of being able to impact people and create ripples in the world, change people's lives. So that really helped me to get into not only the mental framing, but also the vibrational framing. I remember meeting one friend here in Vegas many years ago through Toastmasters, and his parents were stage performers and had been on television shows before, and he'd been on stages since he was 3 years old, like performing. And he was one of the most comfortable people I saw speaking. I once competed against him in a speech contest, and he kicked my ass soundly. And he was good. He was just amazing. And he was so comfortable in front of an audience. And one time I invited him to just sit down, and we went to one of the hotels on the Strip, and I just chatted with him for a few hours. I was asking him a bunch of questions to learn more about public speaking in exchange for I was going to help him redo his website. And so he was like, sure, that sounds great. But I would say the main thing I gained from him wasn't so much the technical knowledge and the how-to, although that was useful. It was more just like being in his vibrational presence and picking up his enthusiasm and his excitement for it, because my feelings towards public speaking at the time were not nearly as strong as his. You know, I was still very much vibing in the fear-based space. So that's one of my best tips I can share is find somebody who's already there vibrationally, like where you want to be, even if they're doing things a bit differently, but vibrationally, you know, they have the relationship that you want. Do whatever you can to spend time with those people. And you just want to soak up their vibes. Just keep talking, keep them talking. And you'll start to feel yourself, you know, getting a sense of that. It really helps you get into the heart space. That I find is probably the number one most powerful technique. The other method is to really just guess and test. Try different vibes. I'll share a link in the description for this video with a list of values that I created. And you can see them as a list of vibes. There's over 400 of them. So if you want some ideas to brainstorm, like what might be a thing for me to lock onto vibrationally, just skim through that list and see what resonates with you. Like maybe print it out and circle the ones that matter to you most and start playing around with those and going, okay, so, you know, if one of them is exploration, I love the vibe of exploration. Or adventure, you know, pick those and see, does that do anything for me? Does that help me get past the fear? Caring is one of my favorite vibes, like I mentioned before. That really cuts through confusion. I found that whenever I get confused about what to do next in life, or I feel like I'm just in a vibrational, messy space, I just focus on trying to do something caring or kind for one person. Like, okay, I'll write a new blog post, a new article for one type of person in mind, and I just try to express caring and compassion for them and kindness. Don't worry about anything else. Like, don't worry about how other people might react to it. Don't even worry how it's received or how eloquent I'm being. Just focus on expressing genuine caring. Like, do my best to get into that space of genuine caring. And that is so transformational. I can't tell you how many times I've done that and just said, let me just write something from the heart space and fuck everything else. And it works. It really shifts my energy. It doesn't even matter. Like, I can even feel it shifting my energy now, just thinking about it. So that's how you know you have a powerful one, when even just thinking about it will change your vibes. It's just so effective to like have some of those anchor habits or behaviors where if you ever get confused vibrationally and you're just feeling like my life is a vibrational mess, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling stressed, and you just cut through that behavior that you know will take you into the core vibrational space you really want to resonate with, you really like. And so I love that, you know, just doing something that's an expression of kindness, an expression of caring, because regardless of how it's received, just doing that action moves me vibrationally into that space. And from there, I can create that new sense of groundedness. I moved away from the fear or the anxiety or the worry or whatever it was that was holding me back, or the confusion. And now in that space, I start to create clarity, and so many beautiful things can arise from that. It totally reframes all my problems. I see them in a different light, and now I can start working on solutions. And so that's what something we need, is some of those anchor habits to, go back to again and again when we need them, to rescue us from the messy vibrational swamp we may be in and get us back to vibrational nirvana, or, you know, our strong centered space vibrationally. A recent favorite that I've been exploring see if this one resonates with you, is friendship. Maybe it's because, I've gotten older. I'm now in my 50s. I know that a lot of people regret, losing connection with their friends as they get older. They work too much and they let friendships fade. And so that's been a real recent favorite of mine is like, let me take a look at the vibe of friendship. And I've been making more local friends here in Vegas and really focusing on that because it's so easy for me to make online friends just from the nature of the work I do. And there's always friendship energy flowing through that space. But sometimes I have a tendency to neglect my local friendship life. And so a little over a year ago, I just decided to make a bigger commitment in that and started making more local connections and making some good friends there. And I really like how that's going. That's progressing really nicely. But I felt like I want to take it to the next level and I want to really feel like I'm getting more aligned with it. So there's a sort of a challenge I give to myself, and I invite you to do this too if it resonates with you, which is to express the kind of vibrational desires I have in a new direction. And I find that when I can't express them, like share it publicly, like post something on my website about it, that I'm really not that aligned with it yet. And so what I decided to do is I decided to put up a local friends page on my website. And I'll share the link to that in the description if you want to check it out. It's something you could even model for yourself. You may not align at all with what I'm inviting. That's totally fine. But take the idea of it to heart. So write up an invitation for what you want to have in your life, friendship-wise. Like just think, what's the ideal? What kind of friends do I want? What do I want to do with them? What are some possibilities? What kind of vibes do we want to share together? You'll notice you probably feel some resistance to sharing it, but then get specific about the resistance. Like which parts? Are there some paragraphs you could share and some parts like, okay, that's the edgy one. I can't really share that publicly. What if my family sees that? My parents see it? Oh, that would be terrible. Then you have some resistance to inviting that into your life, right? You're worried about the judgment because now you're vibing with the fear energy. So do your best to get into the vibe of what's the authentic friendship energy? Like if I really feel this, why can't I share it with everyone? It's not that big a deal, is it really? Why do I need to have any resistance? So that's what I did. I wrote the first draft. I read it back. I noticed what I didn't feel so good about. And I noted my inner objections and I dialogued with them. And then I revised it. And I did that a few times until I felt like, yeah, I've addressed all the inner objections I have. And now I ought to feel free to publish it. And so publish it I did. Did that last month. I could keep that page up for years. Now, the point is not whether the page is effective in inviting more friends. Most of the people who are into my work are not here in Vegas. And so I don't know what the chances are or the probability is that somebody who will see that page will actually reach out to me and say, hey, I think we could be friends. That's actually what I want. That's actually what I want to invite if we have really strong compatibility. And so the page is partly to filter people for that. So it could work in that way. But really, I think the main purpose of it, at least this is how I saw it, was to help me feel more aligned vibrationally with this vibe of friendship and to get past my inner squabbles and objections about it. Like, why not? Why not invite friends? Like, I want more friends in my life. That seems like a really good thing. Get past any worries about, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. You shouldn't have to ask for friends. You should just have them by this time in your life. Yeah. Get past all the shoulds. Get past all the what if somebody sees it and they criticize me? Yeah, sweep that all aside. Then they're an ass and just kick them out of your life if you need to. But also thinking about, I'm writing this for partly for myself, but also for the one person who could be an incredibly good friend for me. I have a best friend already in my wife, Rochelle. Rochelle and I are best friends. We do all kinds of things together. We love each other, but we are activity buddies. We do, she calls us being life partners. So we do so many fun things together. And I already have some other good local friends and I have tons of good online friends. I have a rich and abundant friendship life already. So it's a space where I already feel very non-needy. And through that, it was really helpful to go into that non-needy space, feeling the abundance that I already have there. And then just vibing with, what if I could invite even more of that, especially locally, for other friends to do things with, hang out with. And I thought, wow, okay, well, they'd have to align with a lot of different interests of mine potentially and be accepting of me, people who can accept me for me. And so that's just all part of it. And so I thought, I'm just going to ask for the ideal. And I thought, if Rochelle read that, she would be like, yeah, we're a great match. She wouldn't experience any friction there. So what I realize is when you create these kinds of invitations, the key is to invite them for the person who will not experience any friction. So you don't have to worry about guarding against all the different kinds of potential objections. Write it for the person who will like you for you and express more of your personality, express all the stuff you're into, lay it all out there so that they can recognize you as a great match for them. Many years ago, I put up on my website a meeting in person page, which is simply a page inviting people. If you ever come to Vegas or you happen to be in a city where I'm traveling, invite me to meet up. And I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of these in-person meetups, and they've been beautiful. Usually we meet at a coffee shop and we talk for a couple hours and we have a great time. It's really, fascinating, intellectual exchange and, deep connections. What I found through doing this is a lot of people are just super friendly with me because they've been reading my work for a number of years, and they already know a lot about me. And so, when they come to meet with me, I find it's best to imagine that we're already friends. It's like just treat them as good buddies right away. And usually the conversation flows from there. If I treat them like a stranger, it doesn't feel right to them because I'm not honoring the relationship that they already in their minds have with me. That was kind of a weird thing to get my head around, but it kind of made sense vibrationally. And so when I got into the vibrational space, like, oh, we're already friends, it's a friendly thing to do, then it created some really beautiful connections and the conversation flows a lot better too. Now, after I made the friends page and I put that up on my website, I felt like I was still holding back a bit and I felt like I wanted to be even stretchier. So I decided to make a whole separate page. And even though I had this as kind of a tiny little part of the friends page, I decided to expand it and I put up a lovers page. Because Rochelle and I are in an open relationship and I tend to be sometimes lazy with that. I decided, do I want to have more expansion in that area of my life? Yeah. And then it was the same process. Like, okay, let's write this up. And then what are all the objections? And I even discussed some of it with Rochelle too. And, you want to do things in a safe and sane way. And of course, prioritizing the relationship with her. I love her dearly and don't want to mess that up. And so we've already had a lot of experiences along those lines. And I thought, what if I invite more abundance in this area and open it up more? Can I do that? And then, going through the process of voicing the objections and going into the space of like, there are people out there for whom this would be a really cool, ideal situation. If you care to know those details, I'll share the lovers page link in the description too. What I invite you to do is get the gist of it vibrationally of what I'm doing here. You are probably not into the same kinds of things I am. So I have some, details about certain things, what I would like. And those may not be your likes, and that's totally fine. But the idea is to be able to get to this point where you can make these kinds of invitations resistance-free. And I can genuinely say I have no resistance to it. Even if people will criticize it, whatever. Like, they're going to do that.
Putting a page on your website to invite new lovers is very naughty. And you're totally going to burn in hell for that, you slut.
Maybe. The key to experiential richness is really about picking the right vibes. Something that for you is stronger than fear, something you can treat as your new vibrational base. And once you find strong vibes that draw you away from fear and they expand your thinking and they help you see new solutions, then it's wise to commit to going deeper with them, continue to explore those vibes. I suggest you do that by making small bets and then increasingly bigger ones as you build trust. The more you practice with your new vibrational space, with your stronger vibes, the more you'll build skill with them, the more you'll learn like when they work and how they work. And you'll just see sort of a magic happening in your life, how these new vibes can open up so many more possibilities for you. One of my favorite vibes, for instance, is the vibe of exploration, that sense of discovery and wonder from doing something new. So I would lean into that with some smaller explorations. And then as they showed promise, I would bet bigger and do bigger commitments and bigger explorations in certain directions. For instance, when I wanted to get into traveling, I would take week-long trips and then I gradually built them up to longer trips, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. With leaning into video, I started small and did some, smaller videos. And now I'm committing to a major video course, which is a big stretch for me to be able to do this. Even though I've done other courses, this one with all the, the recording and the video editing is a much bigger project. But I started in building up my trust in the experience and realizing, okay, now I'm at the point where I feel like I can trust the process. I can trust the creativity to be there, trust the inspirational flow, trust my skills well enough to be able to do this, trust the audience, trust the whole vibrational container of the experience. Another favorite is the vibrational space that we might call consent or agreement or willingness or mutuality or win-win. And I realized there's so many really amazing experiences that we can have in life if we just find one other person or a small group of people who agree to have that kind of experience consensually. And when you have a fear-based framing, you will probably miss that. You will probably think, oh, I'm going to get rejected. People won't want that. I can't invite this. But you can invite it, most likely. And if you invite it and you find somebody else out there who's willing to do that with you, then you've got it. Then it's like, great, you're off and running and you can do that. So if you think about like, what's the space of agreement? What's the space of win-win? Who is the right person to invite for this? Can I just create an invitation and let it bounce off everybody who's a mismatch for it and just write the invitation for the ideal match? That is really powerful. You can have so many beautiful experiences with other people if you just invite consent. Like this thing that we're doing right now, this course, this is a co-creative consensual experience that we're doing together. So, I'm just inviting you into the space and saying welcome. But if you don't like the vibes of this space, you are also welcome to leave and to depart, and no hard feelings if that's the case. The key is to stay linked to the vibes that create the best results for you overall, and that create that vibrational strength, that vibrational container that gets you past fear and that activates your best thinking. And your best thinking is really rational thinking. We might even say it's common sense. Like if you make an invitation, somebody out there might like it. But if you don't invite anything, out of fear, then how are you supposed to advance in that particular direction? You probably won't, right? It's just simple rationality when we look at it, but it's amazing how powerful those fear energy vibes are at shutting down our rational thinking and giving rise to all sorts of objections and reasons and excuses not to proceed because we overplay the downsides. And the downsides in many of these cases are really nothing. They're not a big deal at all. So some people criticize you. So what? I got to tell you that being in the arms of a lover and having a beautiful experience together, it makes all the criticism like way worthwhile. You only need one good match there. Having like one good experience in a particular direction can make all the criticism worth having to deal with. It just kind of erases all the sting of it. And perhaps maybe the best thing you can do that will really irk and irritate your critics is just to enjoy your experiences, to invite and to, just have those experiences that your critics are telling you can't have. I can tell you can have those experiences, and it makes the criticism look just ridiculous, just stupid, just like, why was I ever worried about that? One good experience is all it takes to wipe all that out and make it really obvious that none of that even mattered. And over time, you'll learn which vibes help you generate the most aligned solutions. Some of them can be better than others. So many vibes are better than fear for this. So, fear, anxiety, worry, dread, all that vibrational space of fear energy, you can surely do better than that. Another great vibe that I've been exploring more in recent years is patience.
The slow blade penetrates the shield.
Patience is something that encourages me to have a more relaxed pacing. It can be a hard vibration to align with, but it's this feeling of time abundance. And I realize time scarcity also arises from the fear-based vibes, from that fear energy. Then we think, oh, I don't have enough time. But when we vibe with a sense of time abundance, that might be the vibrational space I might use to describe the feeling of patience, then it feels like, oh, I have all the time in the world. I can take my time with something. I can enjoy a more relaxed pacing. I don't need to race. I can allow some extra time for ideas to incubate, allow a more natural pacing to unfold. And that's really beautiful to experience. What about consistency? Well, the key to consistency is to link up with consistent vibes. So when you find your favorite vibes and you go into those vibrational spaces, say like caring or exploration, and then you make decisions from those, you will end up having some consistency in your behaviors and your actions. So whenever I face especially big decisions to make in life, I like to get into that vibrational container that is stable for me, that I know is stronger than fear. So the vibes I might put in are like fun and playfulness and adventure and exploration and wonder and beauty and delight, and put all that in that space and then choose from there. Choose the path that aligns with those vibes. And when I get into the space of those vibes and I start really feeling them, then the ideas that come forth, I know I can trust them. At least they're generally going to point towards solutions, towards interesting paths to explore. And even though it may not be 100% perfect, I know I can also reground myself in those vibes and make decisions anew, like take the new data. Okay, here's how it worked. Now what? And I can still trust those vibes to give rise to other possibilities. I'm like, okay, that didn't work. That's fine. Let's try this instead. And I don't have to beat myself down for, okay, that was a mistake. It's like mistakes happen. That's totally okay. But when you're in the right vibrational container, you will see the mistakes just as learning experiences or part of the growth path unfolding. In fact, mistakes, the right kind of mistakes, can be really beautiful. They can really invite you into all kinds of new growth. And you will see that when you're in that stronger than fear vibrational container, especially if you create a strong container that's consistent and you keep going back to those same kinds of vibes because you know they work for you. You know they're something you can trust. So the key here is that fear energy is weak. Don't use it. Don't use it to motivate yourself. Don't try to push through the fear. Skip it, bypass it, go around it. Even if you think it's cheating, like, oh, am I supposed to feel the fear? No, you're not supposed to feel the fear. You don't have to. You can feel the fear as a messenger when you're already grounded in other vibes, like I described earlier, but don't use the fear as your basis of your self-motivation because you can't trust your decisions when you do that. You will not be in a state of accessing your best creativity, your best brilliance, your best intelligence. You will make a lot of dumbass decisions if you make them from fear-based vibes.
Is everybody dumb?
So I highly, highly recommend you don't go that route. It's not about pushing through the fear. It's about bypassing it entirely. It's about finding that stronger collection of vibes that you know light you up inside and they ground you in something way, way more powerful than fear. And when you have that comparison experience, and that's the invitation here, is to test it, try it for yourself, have that comparison experience, and then you will just look at fear and go, that's just shit. Why would I ever want to use that again? That energy is dumb. It doesn't work. It's not helpful. It leads to idiotic decisions and it traps me. And instead, if you want to go and have a more experientially rich life, you'll find there are way, way better vibes to use than fear energy. So use the vibes that access and unleash your best intelligence. Strong vibes empower you to solve problems rationally and make progress, so you can have many beautiful and rich and rewarding experiences. And your problems aren't there to beat you down or to stress you out. Your problems are really invitations to find better vibes. You can see your problems as an invitation into the vibrational space. The reason you think these are problems instead of invitations or opportunities is because you're vibing with some kind of fear energy. And with the right vibes, solving problems becomes a whole different kind of experience. It becomes something fun and adventurous and rewarding and interesting and intellectually stimulating. So that's the invitation here. Find those stronger than fear vibes that work for you and begin to use them liberally in your life.
Don't force it. Use the vibes.